Hey, folks, welcome back to the Women of Water Get Real Virtual Summit, where we are talking about why and where we're leaking women from the water career pipeline, how to get them back, how to keep them on board, and recognizing that water is not just water and wastewater. That's certainly one important part. We've got everyone from conservation and oceans to international water issues to looking at industrial aspects of water and hazardous materials. And we have someone here today. Amanda Livingston reached out to us as we were pulling this program together and said, let's talk about the hazardous materials side, which is very interesting to me because that is actually where I started. My very first environmental consulting firm job was with someone who did these big RCRA, CERCLA, super hazardous waste kind of things. And so this was really cool to have Amanda Livingston joining us here at the summit. Amanda, thank you for being here. Welcome.
Thank you, Kat. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
And we were just talking before we started recording that you've got a really interesting background. So let's go back to the beginning. What got you into doing this kind of work? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So back in my early college days, I was about 17. I was taking just general ed courses, and I really wanted to do something technical, but I really had no idea what I wanted to do. I just knew that I was interested in environmental, and I thought firefighting was super cool. So I was looking at a couple of brochures, and then Wastewater Operator caught my eye. And I thought, wow, that's really interesting. That seems like a pretty neat combination of the two. You get to be out in the field, and you also get the whole environmental aspect. So I started taking classes. I actually had my first job as something called pre-treatment inspections. Now it's more commonly referred to, I think, as like environmental compliance inspector for a city. And I continued taking my college courses and got my certificate wastewater treatment through Palomar College, which is a small college in Southern California. And my first job as an operator was for the City of Fresno as a intern, or not an intern, wastewater operator training. So I spent about 10 years in wastewater treatment. Somewhere around the later portion of it, I actually got the opportunity to work on a pre-treatment hazardous waste site for different chemicals that they were pulling out of the groundwater. So really running through really different treatment process compared to biological treatment for different chemicals, DDT, pesticides, jet fuels, hexavalent chromium.
Mhm.
And then I got my 40-hour HAZWOPER certification. I ended up going back into wastewater because I thought, this is great, but I really want to be a wastewater operator in the biological
Right.
processes. So I went back into it afterwards.
And let's talk a little bit. So you started this 17 years old. You're and it's okay to share that you were a young mother at that point.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so
Had my son really early. So I was looking for stability, looking for a good career.
because that is, that's a big part of the question in terms of, when we talk about attracting women, retaining women, men don't have babies. They might babies, but they don't actually carry babies. And then, so you had to get early on. And, another part of this, we have a lot of women who, go through years and years of school, bachelor's, master's, all that stuff. And by the time they get to the point where, where they would really be advancing in their career, they're having they've got young kids. So you had your kids early on.
Yes.
And so what was that like in terms of just being able to be an operator, to have flexibility, to have benefits and whatnot, to be able to go to school and start working at the same time as a young mother?
Um, well, I think, let's see. So I was juggling night classes and going and working during the day. That's how I ended up finishing that program in wastewater. Um, but it was I don't know how I did it, especially by myself. I have my husband to lean on now, and I think back and it's like, wow, you know, juggling juggling that was quite a bit. I think definitely the benefits of the industry were very attractive at the time, being able to, you know, support myself and my son with what you need. You need medical and
Yeah. And were there other women in operators in the place where you were working? How was that? What was that environment like back then?
um I would say as far as operators, I was the only female, definitely for the City of Fresno, I was the only female. There was a manager, I was very fortunate, that was a female. And so she really looked out for me. I'm not really sure how things would go if I didn't have that support, to be honest, because it's pretty rough, especially being a young female starting out in a highly male-dominated career. It's really hard to learn what you need to learn and have them allow you to do your job. Um, you know, it's nice to have the door held open for you, but if they don't let you if, do the job because you know they want to do everything for you is what ends up happening, whether it's good or bad. It also can take the accomplishments and achievements away from you as well. So, like I said, I was really fortunate that I had that supervisor who was a female in administration, and she really made sure that I was able to have those accomplishments and learn what I needed to learn early on.
Right. And get the trainings, the certification that you needed to be able to continue advancing your careers. As far as balancing with childcare or getting help, family, whatever assistance you
Much more
may have
understanding.
had. Yeah,
Yeah, she
yeah.
was much more understanding than some of my other encounters with the male supervisors later on in my career. Yeah.
Um, so you mentioned as we were preparing for this interview, as far as some of the things that some of the guys would do in the field, as far as lifting things that we shouldn't be lifting, and what happened there?
So in 2012, what got me out of being an operator was I got injured on the job. So like always, I was tasked to clean a tank, and some of the material was heavier than what I realized I could lift. So I actually ruptured a few discs in my neck, and I was off work for quite a few years after that. Just really healing. I ended up going back to school, um, but managing trying to figure out what to do at that point was kind of life altering, honestly. I didn't really know, other than being a wastewater operator, what else I could do, um, what else I felt passionate about doing that related to what I previously wanted to do. So I didn't have the connections to reach out and really find a way out of that. I think it took many years afterwards to really figure that out, kind of soul searching.
And that's one of the things that's interesting in the water industry. There are a lot of jobs that bring in people young, before not waiting until after they finish college or anything, and can be very physically demanding. And whether it's men or women, to be able to understand what the opportunities are to transition. Men might go into management, or women getting those opportunities. The idea of going back to school. What did you do in school when you went back?
I took pre-law. I know, right? Yeah. Really, again, like I said, it took me quite a few years to really figure out how to find my way back into the field and do something that I felt passionate about. Um, I didn't end up going to law school. Um, I ended up going into insurance, and then I didn't like that. So then I went into emergency management. I found myself just sitting at a desk, and I really didn't like that. It was for FEMA, which FEMA is great if you're able to get out in the field. I'm sure there's some really great careers out there, but where I ended up
Yeah.
was at a desk, and I just knew that that wasn't for me. I'd already started school at that point. I was married and ready to go back to school, so I wanted to broaden my horizons in the field, and go after EHS, which is environmental health and safety, because I thought, wow, I could really capture my background and pull it into the health and safety sector and get a broader aspect in my career and diversify. So at that point, I ended up landing a job with a university after FEMA, in chemical safety and hazardous material management. Um, and in 2020, I got my certification in certified hazardous material manager, which is a really great. It's a smaller community for certifications, but it's a really great resource for that field. There's a lot of knowledge. There's a lot of experience to network and resource with, which has been really vital and critical.
Yeah, and and it's good to be able to have these fields that women are able to continue being out in the field, and to be able to do so safely as well. I mean, I don't know if you ever had any
Yes.
situation. I know when I was managing field teams in the oil sands, there were some crews where we'd send up a woman geologist or something, and the site leader would kick her off the site and say, "We don't allow women on our site." I mean, were you
Wow.
did you have situations out in the field where things were kind of dicey or
Um, Yeah, absolutely. Even recently in hazardous material, I had to tell my supervisor that, the situation is unsafe for myself and the other employees, even if they are able to lift more or move more material than I can. It's just an unsafe way of doing it. So, and then of course, being in safety, that really hits because, all that education and training and, and then you think back to all your other experiences being out in the field, and it just gives you a little bit more alertness and attention to
right.
that.
Yeah. I mean, I remember doing a managing because I'd worked at my way up as I was going to school at night, similarly, and I was doing proposals, I was doing site management, whatever. I got to the point where I could do everything but sign off on my reports. And we had this little quarterly monitoring jet fuel, project at an Air
But
Force base, and one of the guys, he would insist on doing things that I was like, don't like. We had a wellhead that that hornet's nest had developed inside the wellhead. It's like, we've got to call the base and get them to get rid of this hornet's nest. Oh, I can do it. I'm just going to put this bucket on. And I just,
yikes.
it's like something out of a cartoon. And the guy's just running past me with hornets going after him.
Oh
And
no.
it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, listen, if I say it's not safe, it's not safe. But were there harassment issues or anything like that? I mean, did you ever feel like
I
guys were trying to get a rise out of you or anything, or did you feel pretty accepted in the places that you were?
um I think it just depended. So I know, like, in one of my jobs as an operator, it was almost like a lot of judgment being a female there.
Mhm.
I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure where that was coming from. Um, but I think I think just finding a support is really important. So even if like one or two people are supporting you is being female in the field, I think you'll end up being able to really rise above that
Yeah,
and do good. But if you
yeah,
don't have those supports, like just kind of contrasting between different situations I've had, if you don't have the support, then it is really really hard to excel, and it's really hard to do well and enjoy showing up to work sometimes even.
Yeah. Yeah. And and that's such a huge part of it is, for women to have that opportunity to do what
Yeah.
they love doing, that, we go into these fields because we want to do this work and not dealing with bullshit, judgments or harassment situations or what have you. And people talk about mentoring, people talk about sponsors, champions, in some cases it's almost like a protector, right? That
Yeah.
if somebody's looking out for you, people leave you alone because they know that someone's looking out for you, and that we talk to some women who go out on their own, and suddenly you've lost that protection if you're like a freelance solo consultant or something like.
Yeah. I can absolutely see that happening. Um,
Yeah.
Definitely. It makes me wonder. I never got the opportunity to go into landfill operations, but again, there's another highly dominated male field, and there's absolutely opportunities for waste treatment and hazardous material management. So I'd love to hear from somebody that's in that field too. That would be great.
Right. Well, actually, a firm that I worked with later it was a lot of water in dirt work kind of situations. So we did a lot. We did oil sands, we did landfills, we did um, mining, lots of mining. Oh my God, hard rock, soft rock, gold, whatever. Everyone's got their own little niche, and manufacturing, cleaning up manufacturing sites. Especially with the landfills, there's sort of the politics of waste management and the family, the mafia influence in some places, and they're kind
Yeah,
of fighting each other out and duking it out to see who's going to own which territory with which waste management company. And we kind of sit back and wait to find out who's in charge, and then we go do a contract with whoever won that territory. um but so there's definitely opportunities for women who have degrees in water related fields, again, not just water and wastewater, that having those degrees gives you opportunities, and at the same time, each one has its own culture, each one has its own support or lack of support for women.
yeah.
Have you done anything in terms of building a network with other, I know you and I met through I think with a LinkedIn group or something. Are there networks for women? I think today's like Women in the Trades Day, when we're on the 6th of March and we're recording this, right? They were
Oh, that's
sometime this
awesome.
week in Women in Trades. Yeah. So
Um,
have you get connected with any of those groups?
so the wastewater group that's Women in Water, I believe, is the Facebook group. And I found that just by accident. I was just searching for women groups and wastewater hazmat. I don't know of any in hazmat, but the wastewater and water one on Facebook has been really great. I actually got to reconnect with somebody that was at a plant during my time in the Texas State Guard when we were going to different plants and basically touring them, kind of doing an assessment, a rough assessment. And she
Right.
had worked at one of those plants and then left and gone on elsewhere. But we connected just by like random happenstance, I think.
Well, and
So
this is something that's really, especially since COVID, because it used to be everyone's like, especially if you're working in public sector or whatever, oh, I can't do social media. And then suddenly with COVID, people are at home, they started finding and or forming Facebook and LinkedIn groups, like mentorship, peer mentorship, mastermind type groups, peer coaching, book clubs, all these things start popping up. I don't know what's going to happen to those now that people are starting to go back in the office, go back out in the field. They don't have perhaps as much time to be on these groups. What is the future of groups like that? But you mentioned the guard. I know you had a photo that you wanted to share in terms of your work with the guard. So
yeah.
go ahead and share that.
Okay.
What happened with that?
Let's see. So let me go. back one. All right. Um, so I spent roughly 3 years in the Texas State Guard. I wanted to join to be involved with my communities and contribute towards the state of Texas. Being a new resident from California, I thought, wow, this is a great opportunity to be involved and do something good for the communities and for Texas. I had no idea that they had a program for wastewater. But that's what I discovered is they were very interested in my background and loved the fact that I had been an operator because they are joined with TCEQ, which is Texas's version of environmental quality. And they basically, if there's a disaster that hits, they deploy Texas State Guard to go out and do the initial assessments, evaluations on wastewater and water plants to see how they are running, to see if they are functioning or if they're not functioning. So that was something that I really got to be involved with and see it grow. Being the only one that had really kind of been in wastewater treatment out of the group. It was an engineering company. It gave me kind of the opportunity to be a spotlight and share and teach about wastewater, which was really great. I'd love to see
some leadership experience there.
Yes, yeah, definitely, most definitely. So that's a picture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, is it so? What years was that?
Let's see. So I just last year was my last year. So what was that? 2019?
Okay. And you started in 2000.
2019, I believe, is when I started. 2000,
yeah.
or maybe the end of 2018,
yeah.
something like that.
Well, yeah, it's funny. We've talked with Yvonne Forrest, who is the head of Houston Water, and she actually got into that position right before Hurricane Harvey hit Houston. And, I heard her speak shortly thereafter about, watching on TV as her plants went underwater and in places where there were people inside. And, there were people who kept working inside until the water subsided, living off of whatever was in in the vending machines. And that whole sort of military culture and commitment to mission and getting the job done no matter what. And as well as some of the in this is needing to be accepted within that culture that that women sometimes come up against. But just how valuable that can be to have some of that military experience, and that to be part of the Guard and to be part of the team.
Right. And they really see you as an equal, which is really another big benefactor too, I think, is when you're on a team, you are an equal. And that just goes into the training from day one.
Yeah. Very, very cool. And so from there, where did you go next?
Wow. So I'm currently at a hospital, Children's Health, in Plano. I was able to get a position from my chemical safety and be just a safety specialist, but I'm also still in the role of managing hazardous materials, which is really great. I still love that aspect of my career and just being involved, I think, more with people too. That's really the biggest change I could say between the difference of like being out in the field and hazardous material or wastewater versus when you transition into more of like the safety and health environment, you're more dealing with people on a regular basis. So that's going into the labs and discussing with them about their PPE, eye washes, different chemical fume hoods, and
Right.
different ways that they're managing their chemicals. And then as well as pharmacies too. So pharmacies have chemicals, and they need the same type of precautions as the laboratories.
Well, and I think there was an increased awareness of the connection of water within buildings and facilities, and especially uh, um, healthcare,
Mhm.
when you started seeing the green gov, the federal requirements for sustainability within any federal facilities. Executive orders began coming out in Obama years, 2008, 2010, thereabouts. And and it used to be that people thought water, they thought taps and toilets, they thought
Mhm.
lawns. Um, but to think about what energy and carbon footprint and whatnot goes into uh piping water, heating water, cooling water. A lot of that goes into hospitals, as well
Yeah.
as the sanitary, the super sanitized nature of water in a hospital setting. That you have to make sure that that there's no gunk on the faucet, that nothing's getting into the water, nothing from the water is getting into the air, and that you have that healthy environment, and how critical water is to all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think just to touch on too what you're saying about resource conservation and like anytime you're in a hospital environment, they go through mass amounts of material, and you really have to be conscious of how that waste is managed, and even in like the university setting too, because the cost of having to go and have that disposed of and picked up by your transport companies, it becomes really overwhelming. And during COVID, we saw that just skyrocket. Um, so that is definitely something.
Yeah, actually, how was that? So you were there during COVID in the
I was
hospital.
during, yeah, right after.
Okay. Okay. So
So
you
20,
weren't there during the peak
no,
bodies
not
lining the
during
hall.
2020. I was at FEMA
Okay.
during 2020. In 2021, I started at the university.
Did you hear a lot about I mean, and what's that been like in terms of the workforce there for the people? I mean, are people still sort of shell shocked, or still just burned out from that massive demand?
Yeah, well, I think what's really happened in the industry is a lot of people left. They just got completely overwhelmed with what happened with COVID, and they went to other other sectors. So I know as far as hazardous materials, I'm always seeing vacancies. That's a really
Mm.
high demand um, niche, I guess, out of environmental.
Hmm.
But and then it could be, different factors as far as like the baby boomer era retiring. I know my uncle just retired from the Army Corps of Engineers, so that could have something to do with it as well. Besides what was going on with COVID, is they just thought it was a good time to be done, and it's left a lot of vacancies, a lot of voids.
Yeah, we actually did a program, a summit, this Water and COVID-19 summit, where we spoke to people about some of the issues of what was happening in the hospitals. We had all these, people applauding doctors and nurses, but there were a
Yeah.
lot of other people who work at the hospitals, and often you had a lot of people who weren't English speaking, or low income, going in and cleaning out the hospital, the surgical suite after someone's on the table, the cleaning crews, and then they would have to isolate or go home and have to like completely take everything off before they could be with their families, and the spread of the disease, concerns about that, um that all these factors come into play, and how to make sure that we have a safe environment for our healthcare workers, And
Right.
not just the doctors and nurses, but the people in the labs and the people, on the cleanup crew, the maintenance and everything else. So really critical to make sure that we have that understanding and whether it's COVID or whatever the next disease is, a lot of that is showing up in our healthcare facilities, right?
It is. Yeah, it definitely is. That monkeypox and even ones that we've eradicated here in the United States, and then every once in a while will come in and they have to report it to the health department and do quarantining and everything else, like polio or something, that we don't see here anymore, but it'll still once in a while go through the hospital and then yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
Yeah, it's
what?
definitely thank
Huh?
you. It's an environment that seems like it's always changing. That is an appeal of hospitals is like you don't know what to expect from one day to the next.
Yeah, yeah, and I think there are people who go into this. They like that, we're always doing something good. It's never boring.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
So,
that's true.
yeah, any career advice or or words of warning or
Yeah,
as people are looking at these various ways of working with water, using skills and whether it's in the profession, the engineering science, whether it's in the trades, you know, and by the way, I got my Hazwapper 40-hour training. I have my steel toe boots, and they were much similar to the ones that all these new companies are coming out with PPE that's made for women, right?
I love
That
that.
actually is for women. And you had
I'm
another photo
excited.
there of your PPE.
Oh,
So
okay, hold on one second. Let me get that up here. I There we go. That's fall protection, respirator. So I was doing some grinding on the tanks that were holding different types of chemicals and hexavalent chromium, pesticides, all kinds of nasty stuff that we were withdrawing out of that groundwater table to run through the treatment process. And yeah, it was like 115 or something that day. I think I was drinking my sweat, standing on a ladder grinding.
yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Yeah. So was that, obviously that wasn't um like a women's size. It was just whatever was in whatever was available. That's what you
Yeah,
put on, right?
the straps are way too low, as you can tell.
Mm-hmm.
They should be across my chest, not at my stomach. Yeah, I probably should use that for some training. What's wrong with this picture?
Right, right. Well, like I said, there are some, we were at a fashion show last year at the Empowering Women in Industry that actually they brought in some of the companies, and hopefully we'll get to hear from some of them. I'm still waiting to hear back with as far as what some of the new things that are happening. A lot of women who have worked in these sorts of positions could not find PPE that fit them, went
Yeah,
back for training in fashion tech and whatnot, and are now designing stuff that's really sized for. It's not about just pink it and shrink it, right?
yeah,
Of really making sure that we have good fitting clothing that isn't going to get caught on something, that isn't going to be, the straps in the wrong place. That we can really protect the women in these positions. So
yeah. And I think that like besides PPE, there's other environments that you don't always think about. So your office desk, like sometimes the chair is just really too big for a petite female. Or I know just recently at the university, the work trucks, there's a couple of ladies that were just too small to see over that hood of the work truck and touch the pedals and properly be able to operate it. So those are things that are, I think harder to touch. Like how do you fix something like that? It's not as easy as PPE always. Um, so definitely I feel like us connecting and networking is really critical to keeping women in their careers in the future.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and hopefully the folks at the UN Water are gonna understand that there's more to it than childcare and waste and lactation rooms at the job
Yeah,
site if we want to have women in these industries and keep women in these industries and create opportunities for women who are in many cases maybe supporting themselves, that work is not optional for women. There's sometimes that perception. I mean, if women
yeah,
were if men were leaving certain industries at the same rate women are leaving these industries, there'd be retraining, there'd be new hiring programs or whatever. But a lot of women are they're trying to support their family, they're trying to support themselves. It's not, I'm just doing this for fun, until I decide to quit and go be a housewife and take care of my
yeah.
husband or whatever.
I still feel like to this day the best career I ever had was being a wastewater operator. I mean, it's just a blast.
Nice. Yes.
Like
Yeah.
even though you can be you can create that diversity and that flexibility in your experience and your resume or your portfolio, but I think at the end of the day, I would probably just go back to being a wastewater operator.
It's a very strong community, and I can totally get that that self-identity of, well, at heart, I'm a wastewater operator. Just like
I think
me,
I
I
am.
haven't been
Yeah,
doing engineering for a while, but I still think like an engineer. I still, want to solve
exactly.
problems like an engineer. And once you learn that, that approach of let's just solve the problems and get things done. And I think we have an opportunity with women in water in all areas of water to say, hey, let's get real. Let's look at the real issues that are happening. Let's find ways to attract women, to keep women, not just retention, like, lock the doors so they can't leave and put a child care facility on the site, but actually address some of the issues that women are facing, like PPE, and like safety concerns, and not just being
Yes.
macho and doing things that aren't safe and ignoring the woman who says no, you should do it that way. But
Exactly.
really, make it a place for women to grow and thrive, and if they leave for any reason, to be able to come back into the industry. And yeah, some great opportunities. Amanda, any final
Thank you.
thoughts before we go?
What's that?
Any final thoughts before we go?
Um, I just would encourage everybody to keep exploring. You never know what type of field that doesn't appear to have the crossovers that it really does. So even at a hospital, I'm going inspecting tanks. We have a grease interceptor, and there's a recovery system for our decontamination unit. So I've recently looked at that as well. We do tier 2 reporting and spill prevention, air permitting, all that kind of stuff that, I think that the industry for being in the field that we're in is really wide open for women to pursue their dreams.
Excellent, excellent. Well, folks, everyone not here watching us, please do type in your chat below if you are an operator, if you're working in hazardous materials, if you had some career changes along the way. Go ahead and put that in the chat. Any questions? Amanda will be able to check the chat and respond to you. And we'll probably link some resources in here as well. And we really appreciate you being here. Come on back to all of the amazing videos, the amazing interviews that we have here at the Women of Water Get Real Virtual Summit. Amanda Livingston, thank you so much for being with us here today.
Thank you so much, Kat.
Thanks so much for joining us for this extraordinary conversation, one of 45 extraordinary conversations we had as part of the Women of Water Get Real Virtual Summit, where we explored where and why women are leaking from the water career pipeline, how we can stop those leaks, and even bring women back to water. I hope that you will enjoy all of these amazing interviews. If you don't have a chance to watch all of them during the summit, you have the opportunity to join us with a power pack and get lifetime access to all the videos, as well as an opportunity to join us for 30 days in a brand new community where we will dig even deeper in live facilitated conversations about some of the issues that are facing women in water. Look forward to seeing you there. Please join us at watercitizen.org/women, watercitizen.org/women for more information. See you again soon.